Hi, it's a cold and wet Monday afternoon, and here is what I'm thinking about. What a Korean web novel taught me about happiness. So recently I picked up this web novel called Leveling Up Through Eating. It's about a guy who's bulimic and therefore morbidly obese. He eats way too much, and he's been trying his best to lose weight for the past few years. It hasn't worked, so he tries a moonshot. He throws himself into this VR game where he can not only, see and touch things, but he can also smell and taste them. And it helps him sort of fulfill his bulimic compulsions to eat while also being able to experience the full gamut of foods that he has sworn off of for the past few months and years. And that's because, he's trying to lose weight. He tries to eat nothing but salad in a way of curtailing his calories, but that means he's been living a rather sad life in terms of cuisine for the past few years. But anyway, it's a rather interesting premise, but the part that I want to draw attention to is how much joy the novel makes you feel when the main character is eating. The author makes it a point to describe in full detail the experience of the main character. You can see those pent up desires, long denied for years, being finally fulfilled, and you feel that it's a very rich experience, and you feel very fulfilled by reading it. There's a very genuine kind of happiness that comes out from it. And it's made me think, how can a novel make me feel this way? Well, for starters, I do enjoy eating. I do enjoy eating a little bit more than I should. And I guess that's kind of, maybe I'm foisting myself upon the character. I'm projecting onto the character in a way. And maybe that's why I'm enjoying it. But at the same time, I think it's also because it's a very rich experience, right? Even very simple things, simple foods are written as if they are gifts from God. And I think that's a very powerful mindset. So anyway, it's made me think about happiness, right? Why certain kinds of happiness endure? Why certain kinds of happiness feel particularly good? Why do they last? What does it mean to be, how can we make ourselves fulfilled and happy in the long term? So there are two main ideas that I want to cover. The first of which is presence of mind and amplifying happiness. The second one is the two kinds of happiness, creative and consumptive. Yeah, I'll go in a bit more into detail afterwards. So let's talk about the first one, which is being present. Presence of mind and how you can amplify your happiness. In the recent few years, there's been a movement calling for mindfulness and gratefulness as a way of improving the well-being of people around the world, especially those of us who live in developed countries or more developed countries. Pace of life is way too fast. Even the wonderful little things that you experience, they just, whatever little joy that they could offer is brushed aside because of the tempo at which you're moving. So there's a call to, being mindful and present and experiencing the fullness and richness of life, blah, blah. It sounds like a bit of mumbo jumbo until I started trying it. So what I've been doing is, even for little things like the grossly mediocre coffee from the convenience store downstairs, I take time to sit and appreciate it. And I think that kind of reminds me of what I consider a fulfilled life. Right? My idea of a fulfilled life is not one where you're perpetually high and happy. It's a deep contemplative, fulfilled sense of, I can't quite find the words, but it's being very comfortable with yourself, and looking at things and being able to be reflective and contemplative, and at the same time being able to be satisfied. I think that's the word, satisfaction. being able to sip at otherwise mediocre coffee and go through the fullness and richness of the experience, go through all the notes and hints of flavor, even if they're not that great, and still be able to come out of it feeling that, hey, I've experienced something good, that's something that's worth experiencing. So that's my idea of a fulfilled life. And that is something that you can try and apply and practice, in fact. So I've been trying to do that with the things that I'm eating and drinking nowadays. I've been lucky to have an opportunity to practice because I've received a advent calendar of whiskey that my girlfriend sent me as a belated gift. So why it acts as a good form of practice is because whiskey is you can drink it in any way you want, right? You can slam it down and just experience the alcohol high, or you can slowly contemplate it and appreciate the complexity of the whiskey, right? Whiskey, because of how it's matured and because of the many, many variables that go into making whiskey, each distillery comes out with their own, flavor profiles. And the thing about these kind of advent calendars is that they don't give you a lot of whiskey. So it encourages you to savor whatever they sent you. And for me, it's been a sort of passion that I've been nursing throughout the years. I've been making it a point to try different kinds of whiskeys. And, it's quite a tough thing to do to savor whiskey, especially if you haven't found the words to describe it. But I realize it's something that you can practice and get better at. Why? Because that's precisely what I've been doing. So the thing is that when you savor whiskey, there are three sort of areas that you can consider, which is the nose, how the whiskey smells, right? The palate, how does it taste on your tongue? And the finish, what happens afterwards when you swallow the whiskey, right? Does it just instantly disappear, or does it linger? What other flavors does it bring to the fore while doing that? So it's a very fun and challenging experience trying to pin down the different flavors. You smell something, it's hard, but you have to find a way to describe it in a way that someone else who hasn't experienced it can also understand what the whiskey tastes like or what it smells like. And it requires a lot of contemplation. It makes you sit down and think, okay, wait, that reminds me of something. Does it remind me of what? Tropical fruits? Does it smell like a slab of oak smacking me in the face? Does it smell like fire? All these little things. And I end up spending a good 30 minutes trying to think of the words required to experience that whiskey, and in a way it helps me expand and extend that one little bottle to a 30-minute experience. But it always makes me come out feeling kind of fulfilled because I feel like I've experienced something fully, and that makes me feel very, very satisfied, very at peace with myself. And when I start, and it's a skill, I would say, the ability to sit down and appreciate is a skill. And when I start applying it to other things like food that I get out of the canteen nearby, or the restaurants, it's still, it's just as powerful of an experience. And I don't think I would have been able to do it without my practice. But my point is that the ability to be satisfied and happy with little things is a skill that you can cultivate, something that you can start doing now. And I guess it affirms something deep within us. And I'm guessing that it's affirming us being alive, right? Our state of being alive. Because all these things that we are experiencing mean nothing if we are dead. And I guess it affirms that deep-seated need to, not be dead in all of us. And maybe that's why it's so powerful. So I feel that doing this, something like that, being able to appreciate, being present, being mindful of the food and drink that you have, the little joys that you have, it's made me feel a little bit better nowadays. So the other kind of happiness that I wanted to talk about was now, or at least the two kinds at least, is the creative kind versus the consumptive kind. Now, consumptive, I know I'm definitely using the word wrong. Consumptive is supposed to mean, or supposed to describe, people who have the consumption, which is tuberculosis. I mean consuming. So creative would be, a creative kind of happiness is the kind that, it's the joy and pride that you get out of making something, right? You fold a paper crane. You look at it, it's like, that is my handiwork. That's a creative kind of joy, right? And on the other hand, consuming, a joy that comes from consuming is like what you finish a Dota game and you win, right? It's a temporary kind of joy. It's short and it's intense, but it doesn't last very long. So I realized that we always have a choice between these two kinds of happiness. There's the kind that, you can consume something and experience happiness now, experience the high now, but the pain comes afterwards when your brain is left with that void. When the dopamine is gone, all that's left is desire and emptiness, and you want to throw yourself back in again. And I would say that's a very common kind of happiness. Most of us are staving off the emptiness and the hollowness by throwing ourselves into these temporary consumptive kinds of joys. Yes, I'm using it wrong. I'm using the wrong word. I'm doing it by choice because it rolls off the tongue better. But anyway, most of us are throwing ourselves into that because it's an easy hit, right? But in the grand scheme of things, it makes you feel worse because most of the time you will not be able to experience that joy. And all you are left with is this gnawing hunger to go back into it. And it might even cripple you in other things you have in life, in other challenges that you have, in other avenues and projects that you have, because you're just so consumed by that hunger, that gnawing hunger within. In contrast, your creative happinesses are those things like, for example, this project that I'm doing, these episodes, this channel, the whole thing is me creating something and being able to turn back and say, hey, that is my handiwork. It's something that I begat. Yeah. I would call this joy, it stems from it affirms something within us, the ability of humans to change the world around them, to leave something that might last a bit longer than they would. In a way, I would almost call it a divine commission to create. And I am not a religious man by any measure, but I think that's the best way I can put it, right? That it affirms our sense of self, that we can create something outside of ourselves, right? Not just something that is bouncing around in our head, but instead we invest the labors and efforts to turn it into something we can call our own. Not so much that it belongs to us, but more of that it comes from us. And that creative agency is, when affirmed, is an intense source of pride and joy, a fulfillment, a satisfaction that consumptive happiness can't quite offer. Which I guess is why, the artist is often consumed by his work, because there's something that gnaws within. I know I'm using similar words, but it gnaws at you to do this. It gnaws at you to create, to leave something behind. And I find that when I make it a point to invest into these ventures, right, these different creative avenues and outlets, it stays with me long after I'm done with it. Perhaps you've felt it before, when you finish like a project, or you finish maybe an art piece that was really challenging to make. You can turn back and point to it and say, hey, that was my handiwork. And you can feel a sense of, I don't know if you feel it that as well, but a sort of pride and joy that comes out of it. in a sense, it kind of makes me understand why parents feel certain ways, why they are so proud of their kids when their kids do something. I guess that it's a similar kind of joy. But anyway, there are those two kinds of happiness, and while I'm not calling for you to completely eschew short-term happiness, consuming things. We still need to eat, we still need to find joy in little things, but adding creative happiness into the mix, making things that you can call your own, I think that helps in elevating your sense of being. It makes you feel satisfied much longer. If you could compare, your consumptive happiness to like a flash of light, it's bright, it's intense for that short while, but afterwards all you see are like, all you have is darkness, right? But creative kinds of avenues, it's like building a fire. It's a slow, difficult task perhaps, and the fire doesn't last forever, but the warmth of the embers will be there even when the fires are put out. And I think that fits my idea of the fulfilled and happy life with much better than one that is essentially propped up by short-term bursts of happiness. So yeah, those are the two kinds of happiness. The two ideas that I've been toying with for the past couple of weeks, and it was inspired because as a result of me reading that novel. And perhaps you can you can try them out. You can try these ideas out. You don't have to, implement them fully, right? But doing a little bit is probably going to make you feel a little bit better. And I hope it does, because life's hard, right? Life is hard, and we have to find whatever little way we can to make things a little bit more bearable and palatable. So yeah, that is what I've been thinking about for the past couple of weeks, and I hope it will be in some way of use to you.